Hey, hey, hey. Happy Monday. Come on in, pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, amazingly enough, thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So tonight is Monday, October 25th, 2021. This is live stream 707. This is your first time joining me. Let me point out, super casual, just hanging out, talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news. And normally, I will take a first look at a tabletop game, maybe a board game, RPG, what have you. This week is going to be a little bit different because this week it is a Call of Cthulhu week. I don't know, maybe it's because Halloween's on the horizon, and I've got some cool Chaosium releases that I'm ready to review. So each and every night, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I'm going to be reviewing a Call of Cthulhu release. And tonight, I'm going to review and page through the second edition of Harlem Unbound from Darker Hue Studios and Chaosium Inc. And it's written by Chris Spivey. And we will be diving into this a little bit later. So if you've never popped in before, let me point out that the first half of the show, sometimes a little more than half, is devoted to the latest in tabletop gaming news. And then we will jump into, say, the first look, or tonight, we're going to jump into the review. So if you're watching live, just kick back, relax. It's usually about 30 minutes. We rock on through some cool stuff in the world of tabletop games, and then we will jump on into that review. If you are watching after the fact, then a little bit different. I will have timestamps within about 30 minutes after this stream does end, and then you can just click on a timestamp and jump ahead. So if you're tuning in because you really want to check out the review, then of course, click on a timestamp, jump past the news, and check it out that way. All right, do want to also mention, if you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already, and if you do subscribe, ding that bell. It'll not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Central, also inform you when I upload other videos, such as my recent review of Heirs to Heresy from Osprey Games, written by Alan Bear, or Barr. I think it's Bear. Sorry, Alan. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Very interesting. It's kind of a rules light role-playing game about the fall of the Knights Templar. And it's got a little bit of a do-it-yourself kind of vibe to it, because as the game master, you can play it relatively historically, run it kind of historically, or you can make it a fantasy game if you would like. But regardless, it is the Knights Templar trying to steal away with their treasure while the King of France and the Pope are basically on their tails. So check it out. It's a little unique. It's a little bit different. Also, should point out, when you're watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And of course, since this is a live stream, that also means chat is available. It's not on screen. It's one of the ways that I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. But I do my best to pay attention to chat. So if you want to say howdy, maybe get a question, a comment, by all means, chime in. I will do my best to respond. So far, we've got the Madman. That's right, the Motor City Madman himself. And no, we don't mean Ted Nugent. We mean the Madman is with us. He is one of our chat moderators. So good to see him. Boris has popped in as well in chat. Leonardo MML is swinging as say hi. Disavowed 92 has jumped in as well. So chat is off and running. In fact, as I was saying who was popping into chat, they were actually popping into chat. Wasn't that they'd been sitting around for a while. All right. Before we jump into the news, do want to point out today is my mom's birthday. So a very happy birthday to my mom. I always joke around that I was the worst birthday present she ever got. She couldn't return me because my birthday was yesterday. Yes, I am now 54 years old. It's all right. You're only as old as you feel. And I feel like I'm about 80 years old. I feel good. Feel good. Oh, hey, I should also mention some folks have been asking how I've been doing. I'm almost done with my cardiovascular rehab. So if you have not followed the gaming gang, I actually had triple bypass back in June, early June, and have been doing great. Been doing great since. Zach McKinney has joined us as well. I believe this might be a first-time visit for Zach. The name isn't ringing a bell, but that doesn't mean anything to me, right? It's like, oh, I can't remember the person who used to pop in, and I was like, oh, I think it's the first-time visit. They're like, no, this is like the fourth time I've been in chat, man. So the Madman says they've got 3 years on me. I'm not old until I catch up to him. I see how that goes. Omanal's with us as well. Do want to point out, Omanal is one of our new reviewers who just came on board. That's right. So we have 3 role-playing game reviewers now who tackle all of my PDF requests for review. I tackle the actual books because I shoot video. And if it's only PDF, then by all means, they get a shot at that as well. 245 Trioxin is with us as well. Sarah D has decided to say hello. So Zach says, nah, you usually catch me in the comments instead of live. There we go. Good deal. Well, hey, good to see you pop in and catch the stream live tonight. So 245 Trioxin was asking, how was RockCon? I am actually going to share a little bit about RockCon on tomorrow's show. I've got some images I'll share as well. It's just I want to kind of dive into the news because I know there are going to be a good number of people who are really curious about Harlem Unbound second edition. So I don't want to deal with people like, thanks for wasting my time, man. I was like looking, I wanted to see that review. It's like, yeah, timestamps, time code. If you're not watching live, you can jump ahead. Timestamp, time code. Anyway, so I will talk about that tomorrow. Last thing I do want to mention, we are still in the midst of the Gaming Gang October Spooktacular 2021. And that, of course, means that each and every day you'll find a brand new tabletop gaming related video at thegaminggang.com. And of course, right here on the Gaming Gang YouTube channel. It could be a first look. It might be a review. Or if it's Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, it's this show. So you got that. So we are in the home stretch. It is the last week. So by all means, check out the videos. We had a bunch of stuff over the weekend. If you missed it, check it out. Got some goodies there. Had a lot of reviews hit as well. So if you are a Pathfinder or Starfinder fan, and find out what we think, what the gang thinks of the latest releases as well. Also, every night at 9 p.m. throughout October, I am hosting a spooky old-time radio show, which is destined to put a chill down your spine. And I know a good number of you who are in chat have been listening to the shows. So very, very cool. We have Well jumping in chat. Welcome aboard, Well. Sounds kind of odd, right? Welcome. Flaming Huron's with us. So we've got our other chat moderator here also. Very nice. Very nice. So let's jump on in to the latest news. Because, well, you know what? Let me grab a quick sip here first. So the Madman says, yes, absolutely listening to those old-time radio shows. Fantastic stuff. Strap in, because this week's going to have some really good stuff. We're going to have a double dip from Orson Welles at the end. Well, I shouldn't say this week. Halloween, I will have, and it's not going to be War of the Worlds on Halloween. Because a lot of people bust out War of the Worlds on Halloween, but it wasn't a Halloween broadcast. It was actually an October 30th broadcast. So I guess now you know what I'll be doing. War of the Worlds with Orson Welles. Omanal says they remember the old GDW Star Wars RPG. I don't remember a GDW. I remember the West End Games. I don't think there was a GDW Star Wars RPG. So there is some discussion of the Star Wars RPG because Well asked if anybody plays the Star Wars. There you go. Omanal's like, yeah, they meant, I know you knew. I know you knew what the correct answer was. I do that sometimes too. I'm like, oh yeah, it was Avalon Hill. And it's like, oh no, wait. Why did I say Avalon Hill? It was an SPI game. Or actually a GDW game. All right, let's jump on into the news because arriving in February next year from Ares Games is The Thing, the board game. Here's what I know. And if you want to play some of that John Carpenter, oh, actually, you know what? It's not John Carpenter. It is Enrique Morricone, I think is the conductor, well, I was going to say conductor. He's not a conductor. Well, maybe he is a conductor. Anyway, it's his music, not John Carpenter's. I always forget that. Anyway, The Thing, the board game, is an intense game experience based on the 1982 cult movie directed by John Carpenter. It is a game that mixes different mechanics to create an experience that is as faithful as possible to that of the original film. This is a hidden role game in which one player is initially the Thing and the other players are humans. The purpose of the Thing is to infect others to prevent the survivors from escaping from the base, which can happen in 3 different ways, or to try to escape with them by behaving as a human. In addition to these elements, players also have to manage Outpost 31. The game board shows the same rooms as seen in the film, and each of these rooms allow players to perform a different action. Human players have to feed themselves and keep the boiler and the generator on to avoid being in the cold and dark. The Thing will try to sabotage these places to make life difficult for the humans, or not, trying to camouflage itself among the humans and infect them when the perfect opportunity presents itself. You must cooperate to survive, but who is really on your side? And if you reveal the Thing, are you ready to fight it? The road to victory is truly hard, but not impossible. The Thing, the board game, is for 1 to 8 players, ages 13 and up, plays in around an hour. It's going to carry an MSRP of $59.99 when it arrives in February of 2022. I just showed the miniatures set. So there is a set of miniatures that represent the humans at Outpost 31. It is available for $29.99 also in February of next year. So, Ennio Morricone, thank you, Omanal. I appreciate that. yes, did the music for the good, the bad, and the ugly. I also believe, well, this is just coming out of the air here. I'm pretty sure that he also did the music for The Untouchables with Kevin Costner and Sean Connery. Yes. Yes, that was Brian De Palma, which is so historically inaccurate when they kill Frank Nitti. That drove me nuts. It's like, you do realize Frank Nitti ran Capone's empire after Capone went to prison, right? He didn't get thrown off some rooftop. So, and he wasn't some like killer type. He was kind of a wimpy accountant looking dude. So I'm kind of curious about this game because we also have from Mondo Games and, well, now it's the Op. It used to be USAopoly. We have The Thing, Infection at Outpost 31, which I actually like. I think it's pretty good. I don't know. Do we need two board games based on the movie The Thing? Because it's very similar. It seems very similar. In fact, when I first was checking this out, because this was a very successful Kickstarter, I was taking a peek just to make sure that this was not some sort of like souped up version of that Mondo Games release, and it's not. And in fact, if you take a look at the Kickstarter, I don't think there's the availability of doing a late pledge anymore, but there are like all these like additional characters and stuff like that. I was like, oh, it looks kind of interesting. The Madman says they backed this, and they're saying it should go over pretty well with their one game group. Nice. Zach says right on the money as far as the music. I assume he means The Untouchables. So, all right, let's see what else there. Zach says there's still an odd that there was a Dallas RPG, which wasn't that TSR? I think that was TSR. I'm almost positive that it came in like a box set. Okay, let's move on to the next news piece because there's a new expansion for the fantasy game Squire for Hire from Letiman Games. It's coming next month. Here are the deets on Squire Pack 1. Expand your selection of loot hauling squires with Squire Pack 1, the first character expansion pack for Squires for Hire and Squires for Hire Mystic Runes. This pack includes 18 new Squire cards with a range of new item combinations and abilities to help manage your junk and give you a lot more variability with each play. It includes an equal number of compatible Squires for both Core Set 1 and 2. Use any Squire when combining both core sets. Your day has finally come. A famous adventurer has hired you, yes, you, to be their Squire. When your hero completes quests, defeats baddies, and takes all the credits, damn you for taking all that credit. They also earn loot, which you get the great honor of carrying. Squire for Hire is an 18-card tile-laying inventory management game for 1 or 2 players that takes about 15 to 20 minutes to play. Players compete to get the highest scoring bag of items for their hero by the end of the story deck. Each player takes on the role of a random Squire card, taking turns completing story cards and adding loot to their bag for points. You can complete story cards in one of 2 ways. 1, having enough item value, the combined number of spaces an item type takes up in your bag. Or 2, using an item, covering up an item in your bag with a new loot card. If you could complete a story card, you get to pick one of 2 loot cards to add to your bag. To do so, at least 1 full item must be placed within empty or full squares. You can cover any number of other items in your bag as long as the entire item is covered. Once all story cards have been exhausted, players add up their scores. Add 1 point for every regular item, 1 point for each pair of identical items side by side, and extra points for conditions met on your Squire card. Visible junk items reduce your score by 1 point each, so cover them up whenever possible. Keep vital items in your bag for when you need them. Pack efficiently for extra points and eliminate junk to be the squire with the highest scoring bag. Play solo to beat your own high score with all of the cards. Squire for Hire is for 1 or 2 players, ages 12 and up, and it plays in around 15 to 20 minutes. The Squire Pack 1 expansion is going to arrive November 10th. It's going to carry an MSRP of $7, and I think it's just $7. I saw one price that's saying it's $7.99, but the rest of the distributors are saying $7. So I believe it is $7, and it arrives next month. I wish I had more images to share. This is the only image that's floating around out there. In fact, even the core game itself, or I guess we'll say the 2 core games, they don't have a lot of images floating around for those either. At least images that I could utilize. There are people who shared pictures on Board Game Geek, but once again, I don't just take images from Board Game Geek and use them all willy-nilly like. I just don't do that. Let's move on to some role-playing game news, because January is going to bring a new gift set for Dungeons & Dragons. They were hoping to have it by the winter holidays, but just didn't happen. But here's the scoop on the Rules expansion gift set from Wizards of the Coast. Crafted for dungeon masters and players alike, this collection brings together all 3 5th edition Rules expansion books in one gift set, complete with a beautiful new Dungeon Master screen. Embark on a journey with the rival wizards Tasha and Amorden Kanan and the crime lord Xanathar. Learn new secrets and discover magical new ways to play the world's greatest role-playing game. It includes the 5th edition's best-selling Rules expansions, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and Monsters of the Multiverse, as well as a DM screen, altogether for the first time in a beautiful slipcase. This marks the debut of Monsters of the Multiverse, a comprehensive resource for players and dungeon masters alike, containing over 30 updated player character races and a massive bestiary with over 250 redesigned monsters and stat blocks, all for use in any D&D world. Each of the 3 books and the DM screen features special foil covers available only with this release. It's the perfect set for players and DMs looking to expand their game with additional rules and character options. There is also an alternate covers version, which you're seeing right now, of this gift set. It includes beautiful, you guessed it, alternate covers and DM screen with, obviously enough, alternate art. Each of the 3 books also has a special foil alternate, which is included in this release. Not in the standard release, in this release. And the way that this news sell sheet info is presented, it makes you think the standard is foil covers. They're not. It's this. Just explaining that. Both editions of this gift set are going to hit stores on January 25th. They're going to carry MSRPs of $169.95. This about 92 says likey. And Well says nice art. I like the alternate art. I like that. I think that's a very cool, clean look. Yes, Zach's pointing out. Yep, the white one. Yeah, I definitely dig that. I definitely like that quite a bit. It does look like the artwork is a little cartoonish. Once again, there aren't a lot of images floating around, especially of the alternate art editions for us to take a peek at. But I like it a lot. I like that clean look. Here's an issue, though, and I think we will hear more of an outcry about this as we get closer to the release. There is no word yet if Monsters of the Multiverse is going to be available separately, or if it'll only be available in this gift set. If it turns out to be only available in this gift set, which I got to be honest, between us, in the wall, I don't see Wizards of the Coast doing something like that because people will be pissed. But once again, there's no word yet if it'll be available separately. I think it will be later on down the line. That's what I think. But just wanted to point that out. I know a lot of people are looking forward to this, especially those who had not picked up the guide to everything's guides, I guess I should say, to everything's the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and Xanathar's Guide to Everything. So, price wise, the thing is a little pricey. I do have to say, $170 for the 3 books, and it's got a Game Master screen, Dungeon Master screen. Oops. Can't believe I said that. Game Master, when I'm talking about Dungeons and Dragons. But it's something to keep an eye out for. I got to be honest, I honestly don't think I'll get a review copy of this. Because normally, from my experience, when we start getting into stuff that's like $100 or more, we don't have an opportunity to review them. So I don't know. I have no idea. Flaming Heron's asking if the Dungeon Master screen is soft card stock. I don't think it would be. I think it's going to be the thicker cards, thicker cardboard-ish sort of Game Master screens. Don't know. Not positive. Just think so. I will actually show you what came from Wizards of the Coast today. And I was not expecting anything. I got a notification that something had shipped out, and I was like, what? I'm like, Strixhaven isn't supposed to be out until December. And I'm like, there's no way that's coming out yet. Those review copies aren't coming out yet. All right. Speaking of Dungeons and Dragons, there is a new source book to supplement the latest D&D release. It's out in PDF for Splinterverse Media. Here's the deets on Fizban's Vault of Draconic Secrets. Splinterverse Media's newest book, Fizban's Vault of Draconic Secrets, offers Dungeons and Dragons players and dungeon masters over 50 pages of dragon-themed content for their games. Time to coincide with the release of Wizards of the Coast Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, which actually hits stores tomorrow. And if you haven't seen my review, check it out. It's already up. Splinter versus Fizban's Vault of Draconic Secrets expands player options with 13 dragon-themed subclasses, including one for each class. Artificers can harness the power of gems as a gemonologist. Druids can transform into dragons as members of the Circle of Scales. Rangers can track and hunt massive monsters as dragon stalkers. Warlocks can be empowered by the Great Worm Patron. And these are just 4 of the 13 dragon archetypes that await you inside. Fizban's Vault of Draconic Secrets also contains 2 detailed backgrounds that bring you face to face with dragons. You can hunt or capture them as a dragon hunter. Oh, that's a pretty obvious name, right? Oh, let's see. So if they hunt dragons, what should we call this background? I got it. Dragon hunter. You and your pet lizard can also seek them to befriend them as a dragon tamer. You can't have a dragon's hoard without magic items. Fizban's Vault of Draconic Secrets contains 10 magic items, ranging from uncommon to legendary, as well as 3 horde magic items that offer 12 rarity variations to drop into your campaign. In addition, a brand new familiar awaits you inside the book. The mischievous Dragonling will worm its way into your heart. No pun intended there, right? With its backstory and its unforgettable appearance. The book includes quotes from Fizban throughout, written by co-designer Matt Kimberlin. Fizban was one of the characters responsible for instilling me with a love of reading. It's not an over-exaggeration to say that Fizban and the rest of the Dragonlance cast are the reason I started playing Dungeons and Dragons in the first place. So the chance to inhabit Fizban for this book was a dream come true, Kimberlin said. Fizban's Vault of Draconic Secrets also contains spells, feats, draconic gifts, trinkets, adventure hooks, and more, all from the team that brought you the gold best-selling Feywild Companion. You can score the 57-page PDF of Fizban's Vault of Secrets right now for $7.99 at DM's Guild. So, well, as any mention of Dragonlance in this book, I would assume there is. I will tell you, if you have not checked out my review of Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, which I always want to call Fizban's Guide to Dragons, which is not the title. It is Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. There's a nod to Dragonlance, and that's about it, which I was very surprised because everybody thinks that is on the horizon at some point, that is being worked on. We do know we've got a trilogy of Dragonlance books that are coming, and I believe those are coming from, I think it's Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss are teaming up for that. Not positive, but I do know that there were some legal issues. They got ironed out. So move on to my final news piece, because right now you can score an awesome deal on the Convicts and Cthulhu role-playing game from Cthulhu Reborn. It's over at DriveThruRPG, and here's the skinny. Convicts and Cthulhu is a source book designed to allow Call of Cthulhu keepers and players to run scenarios and campaigns set in the penal colonies of early Australia. It particularly targets the historical period from 1795 to 1810, a time in which law and order played second fiddle to greed and corruption. This was the depraved era which led ultimately to Australia's first and only military uprising, the Rum Rebellion. Cosmic horror fueled by human cruelty and depravity. The prison colonies of 18th and 19th century Australia are justly feared throughout the British Empire as places of unparalleled suffering and torment. The refuse of the empire are sent here to serve out prison terms in a land half a world away from civilization. A world that, to European eyes, seems thoroughly alien. But few among the white-skinned invaders know just how many secrets lurk within this ancient land. For countless generations, the indigenous men and women have lived in perfect balance with the timeless forces that haunt Australia. But now, just a decade or so after the arrival of the British colonists, their ability to hold these powers in check is about to fail. And while horrors long resident are poised to awaken, dark-hearted white men also brought their own horrors to Australia in the form of terrifying cosmic gods and disgusting occult creatures. Convicts in Cthulhu is a sourcebook designed to allow keepers to play and run scenarios set in those penal colonies. Contained within the book are historical notes on the era, character templates for investigators from all walks of life, indigenous, convicts, military, free settlers, etc., weapons and equipment, and detailed gazetteers for Sydney, Parramatta, and other settlements. Also included are details of cults and mythos entities in the colonies, a full introductory scenario, and a plentiful assortment of scenario seeds. Convicts in Cthulhu is fully compatible with Chaosium's 7th edition Call of Cthulhu rules, but can be easily used with earlier editions with some simple arithmetical, not familiar with that word, tweaking. I understand what it means. Got to change some numbers around, folks. Here's the thing. So, since 2016, Cthulhu Reborn has published over 500 pages of material for the Convicts in Cthulhu setting, encompassing source material, scenarios, historical NPC descriptions, prop documents, and even a campaign frame. This archive brings together everything that's been created to date for this game. And right now, you can get this 500-page PDF of what's being called Convicts in Cthulhu, The Misery Archive for $5 at DriveThruRPG. Yes, you heard me correct. $5. So Flaming Aaron says, spoken like a true Aussie. Just say Melbourne next. Melbourne? 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 Flaming Aaron says, that is a steal. That is correct. And I'll tell you right now, if you're up in the air about spending your hard-earned $5 on this, you can download the Convicts in Cthulhu core rulebook. I think it's pay what you want, which we have talked before. Pay what you want. The publisher understands that the vast majority of people are going to pay nothing, and they are fine with that. It's okay. So if you're kind of up in the air, do I want to spend $5 on 500 pages of content? Check out the core book for free. I have never taken a peek at Convicts in Cthulhu. I have heard of it. I have stumbled across it from time to time on something, a new release on DriveThruRPG. But I gotta say, for $5, there's got to be tons of stuff that you can take, even if you have no interest in that setting. There's got to be tons of stuff you can utilize for whatever Call of Cthulhu kind of campaign you're running, and get your $5 worth. That's for sure. Boris mentions, that's a penny a page. Zach had mentioned we were talking D&D. They're waiting for Planescape, and Flaming Heron says, I wouldn't say, I would say don't hold your breath. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. Can't understand. We're not going to knock Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast is fine. I like the fine folks from Wizards of the Coast. They treat me right. Their PR company always treats me right. I don't, sometimes I scratch my head on who's running what over there and why. But you figure Critical Role is a big deal. Brings a lot of people to D&D, and it's kind of a bread and butter sort of thing. Whereas, like Planescape, Dark Sun, don't know. Omanal says Dark Sun was cool, maybe a bit dark for modern Wizards of the Coast. Maybe not. I'm sure they would tweak it. No doubt they would tweak it. I got to be honest, I'm not overly familiar with anything outside of Forgotten Realms and like Greyhawk. Got to remember, I stopped playing D&D. Well, we were playing advanced D&D. It was probably mid-'80s. Maybe 86 was the last time I had played D&D for quite a long time. So 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 4th edition. Don't really know a whole lot. Bits and pieces, of course. But it was 5th edition that, of course, I was doing this. So Flaming Heron says, surprisingly, most of their friends now think of Call of Cthulhu as their idea of a good RPG, but then most of them are older players. I love Call of Cthulhu. I say it time and time again. Call of Cthulhu is my go-to role-playing game. I have run it since it came out. So when they talk about it's the 40th anniversary of Call of Cthulhu, I'm like, yes, it is. I'm like, I know that for a fact. Because I had that little 1-inch box. I've said it time and time again. Well, not a million times, but I've shared the story where there was a hobby shop that we'd go to. It was a game store, I should say. It was called the Sutler's Wagon in Chicago, because that's where I grew up, on the northwest side of Chicago. And it was on Central, just south of Belmont. And it was a relatively small storefront. And we used to go in there and we would, pick up Avalon Hill stuff. And they carried like, I think that's where we got our first copy of Fletcher Pratt's Naval War Game. And I'll never forget, I saw that box of Call of Cthulhu and I looked at the back and I went, that looks kind of interesting. That looks kind of cool. And I haven't looked back since. So Omenel's talking about, I never liked Spelljammer. Once again, I know bits and pieces about the various different settings. I am far from being a Dungeons and Dragons expert. And I say that all the time. And I know people like flip out, like, oh gosh, what was it? What I do the review of, or I did the first look at. It wasn't in the review. It was in the first look. It was for, The Wild Beyond the Wishlight, the new adventure, which I love. I think is great. It's my favorite 5e adventure out there. And it was like, I didn't know that such and such character was actually Natasha, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. And I was like, you people got to realize I do not run a Dungeons and Dragons website, right? I do not just do Dungeons and Dragons videos and things like that. I'm not one of these guys who I shoot a 10-minute video about some nonsense because I know it's going to get people to click on it. Oh, my favorite subclass in this book. So, if I've got umpteen different role-playing games that I have to look at to provide reviews of, I'm not expected to remember every tiny piece of fluff. Sly Blue Demon has joined us. Welcome aboard. Now, that is someone I know is a first-time visitor, or at least that nickname is a first-time visitor. Saying Call of Cthulhu is great. They're sad they've only played it 4 sessions and need to jump in. Yeah, it's a blast. And tonight, of course, we are going to be talking about a very, very popular supplement for Call of Cthulhu. I'm going to take a sip here because then we're going to jump on in. Flaming Heron says, those videos are a dime a dozen. So nice to see something different. Yeah, I have to laugh when it's like, oh, and I'm not going to name anybody, but there's a couple of people I know nothing about them outside of the thumbnails that'll pop up. And it's sort of like, really, that's the topic of your video, and it's like 8 minutes long, and you have 40,000 views on it. Like, people are just suckers nowadays. They really are. All right. So tonight, doing something a little bit different. We are going to be jumping into a review. So tonight and all week long, it's Call of Cthulhu week. But tonight we are going to take a look at, and I am going to share my thoughts about Call of Cthulhu, Harlem Unbound, 2nd edition from Darker Hue Studios and Chaosium Inc. Right off the bat, I apologize if I mispronounce anybody's name. I always tell people I treat English as if it's a second language. Anyway, Harlem Unbound, 2nd edition, is written by Chris Spivey with Sarah Hood, Alex Mayo, Steffi Devon, Dr. Cameron Hayes, Bob Geese, Noah Lloyd, and Ariel Celeste. Artwork is provided by Brennan Reese, Alex Mayo, and Jabari Weathers. This clocks in at 368 pages, much more than the 1st edition. It is available as a hardcover book for $49.99. I think it's $49.99. You can grab the PDF over at DriveThruRPG for $21.99. So Zach mentions that this is the only 7th edition book they don't own. They said they love the Berlin book, which I am actually reviewing on Wednesday. So let's swing on over to the other camera because here we've got Harlem Unbound. Give you a little background. Sammy Uhas did the review for the first edition of Harlem Unbound when it was from Darker Hue Studios. I was familiar with it, but had not read it. I remember Chris Spivey from it's an introductory Call of Cthulhu adventure called Dead Man's Stomp that takes place in New Orleans. And I know it is now part of the starter set box, but it was not. That adventure has been around for quite some time. I gotta be honest, off the top of my head, I don't remember what collection it was originally in, but I love the fact that it's actually in the starter set now because it's a really good adventure. So it's important to keep in mind that this originally came out from Darker Hue Studios, and this book is now released through Chaosium Inc. And normally, regardless how popular a third-party product is for Call of Cthulhu, you normally don't see them taking on the publication of it. So something to keep in mind, something to remember as we go along here. So let's take a look at the back of the book. I'm not going to read everything from this. Picture this. New York City. Prohibition is in full swing and bootleggers are living high. African Americans flee the oppressive South for greener pastures, creating a new culture in Harlem. The music of Fats Waller and Duke Ellington pours out of the city's windows, while women in stylish skirts and silk stockings and men in white gloves and Chesterfield coats crowd the sidewalks. There's a feeling of possibility in the air like never before. But even in this land of promise, Harlem is a powder keg ready to explode. While classes and cultures collide, the horrors of Cthulhu mythos lurk beneath the streets, creeping through dark alleys and hidden doorways to infect the hopes and aspirations of the unwary. Can you hold it together and keep the terrors at bay for one more song? All right, we're going to jump in. So, I have to point out, it's a Chaosium book, right? So we know we are going to get great production quality here. We got our little bookmark. They love to put the bookmarks in now, which I definitely did because that used to just be a thing where if it was a European role-playing game, then yeah, we saw the bookmarks all the time, sometimes two. But it's very cool to see Chaosium adopt that as well. So a few things before we jump in. Number one, the fine folks over at Chaosium Inc. were kind enough to send me this review copy of the second edition of Harlem Unbound. But neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the gaming gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share my thoughts about this book with you. These days, it's very important for you to remember that. So Boris is pointing out Harlem Unbound is part of the New York Tales of Sleepless City. Boris is talking about the first edition of this book, not this edition. So Boris has pointed out it includes the gumshoe rules, not in this. I know the first edition had stat blocks basically for Call of Cthulhu as well as, well, Trail of Cthulhu, although it's, the gumshoe, series or system. That is not the case with this. This is all Call of Cthulhu. So just wanted to point that out. So anyway, so they were kind enough to provide me with this review copy. I'm also going to stay picture in picture up here in the corner. So I will be cutting off a portion of the upper left of this book. We're not going to look at each and every page. I am going to flip through this at a relatively quick pace as well. But I do want to share what's in this book, what I like about this, kind of give you a better feel for who this book would be best aimed at, and so on and so forth. but I'm not here to share each and every page of this book with you. I'm just not. So Boris points out they've got the first edition. Yep, that's why I was mentioning the first edition does have the dual stats for both Call of Cthulhu and Trail of Cthulhu, but this is specifically a Call of Cthulhu book, and it has way more content than the first edition as well. Zach points out the 40th anniversary Keeper's Rulebook, which I have not had an opportunity to see, does come with the 2 ribbon bookmarks. Hooray! All right, let's jump on in. First off, going to jump in. One of the things I definitely appreciated about this book is that Chris Spivey treats the readers as if they are adults. I definitely like that. I will mention there is some adult language in here, and it's not unusual to stumble across an F-bomb. So I do want to point that out if that's going to freak people out. But Chris Spivey treats the reader as an adult. And one of the aspects right off the bat, Lovecraft was racist! Exclamation point. I have referred to H.P. Lovecraft as an uber racist. And one of the interesting aspects that Chris brings up is you got to be a pretty notorious racist for another racist to say you're too racist, which is actually what Robert E. Howard did with H.P. Lovecraft. And we do know Robert E. Howard was also a racist. Thing I dig, though, is here it is. Boom, right here. I'm going to point this out to you. This is kind of how Chris Spivey approaches it. It's like, I'm going to point this out. I'm going to tell you right up front, and then we're going to move on. There are some Lovecraftian role-playing games. Oh, I'll just say it. Lovecraft-esque. That one of the things I really disliked about it was how it just harped constantly throughout the entire book about Lovecraft's racism. And it was the kind of book where it was like, the term woke wasn't around at that point, but that game was more along the lines of people patting themselves on the back about how woke they were, as opposed to actually providing a gameable game. So that is not the case here. Another aspect of this that I really like, and this is something that I find with all of the best Call of Cthulhu supplements, is that not only are you entertained, but you are going to learn some things as well. And we start off with kind of a history of Harlem, going all the way back to prehistory and moving on from there. So another thing about this book that you want to keep in mind as well is that Chris Spivey shoots straight. I mean, he's going to lay it out what happened historically, how people of color were treated in this country, in New York City, in Harlem, and he does not sugarcoat anything. And I love that, because nowadays we seem to live in a society where history makes people uncomfortable, and history is supposed to make you uncomfortable. You are supposed to be able to sit there and be able to understand some of the sins of this country's past and how we can move beyond it, and how can we make good on promises that were made to people, as opposed to, I don't want to hear that. I need to go to my safe zone. So we don't have to deal with any of that in this. So we're going to go through, we've got pretty much the history of Harlem from, like I said, prehistory through into the 1930s. And that is pretty much the Renaissance, the Harlem Renaissance that was taking place, which is really the heart and soul of this book. And that, unfortunately, kind of came to an end when the market crashed in 1929. You're going to learn a lot of things about New York City and, in particular, the area of Harlem. So we get information about the fashions. We've got a lot of photography throughout that I think is very cool. So the Madman says, if you don't have discussions about history, we can't learn from it. That's right. And if we can't learn from history, then we're condemned to repeat it. So I completely get that. So Flaming Heron says the PDF is on sale at the moment at DriveThruRPG. I think Flaming Heron's talking about the starter set. So there's some discussion of what's the best Lovecraftian game system to check out. And I'll let you guys run through that. That's when I do reviews in that, I try not to, because normally I just record reviews. I don't do it live because I tend to get thrown off very easily doing it live, especially when I try to stay up on what's going on in chat. So I will point out, I apologize. I will not necessarily be carrying on a conversation with folks in chat as we go through this. So we get the next chapter. It's about Harlemites. And I have to say, there are some usages of a certain word that I, as a white person, would never consider like rolling off my tongue. So don't be shocked by that. And it is sometimes used in a historical manner. And there's one section of this that you'll, if you pick this up or if you have this, when you're reading it, you're like, oh, yes, I know what Jeff was talking about. So Harlemites is a section talking about creating your investigators. And to best enjoy the scenarios in this book, it's actually got 7 adventures in it, and they are of a good length. We're not talking just a couple of pages or 5 pages. These are meaty adventures that are multi-session adventures. To enjoy them the most, you really do want to play investigators who are African American or people of color or possibly Jewish or Italian, because those were the people who lived in Harlem. But really, you should focus on your player characters being people of color, not Jewish or Italian. And there is some discussion about approaching that, because I know a lot of people who are Caucasian would feel uncomfortable. And there is some discussion in a later section about that I'll talk about. So here we've got a bunch of different options as far as new skills. We have new occupations as well. We have some pulp talents that are included. Then we move, and there's not a ton of page space devoted to that. Then we get into Souls of Harlem, and this is where we get to run across a lot of the historical personalities who lived in Harlem, who were the movers and the shakers, and who were bringing culture and advancement to the people of Harlem. And I will also mention that they're not all people of color. Jack Legs Diamond, for one. So, but I mean, we have all different, we've got criminals, we've got socialites. Here we've got our clubs and organizations as well. So once we get through that, then we get into Harlem herself, which is a discussion of Harlem and different areas of Harlem. And there were areas where you had Jewish tenants. You had areas which were still Italian. Many of the buildings where the African American population lived were owned by Caucasians. So you've got that as well. So there's a lot of discussion about Harlem itself, what goes on in Harlem, businesses, locations, and so on. We get a bunch of story hooks as well. So you'll see some of these boxes are going to contain story hooks. Some of them go into a little more detail as well. So we get into the storytelling section. Once again, this is not a ton of pages, but I find it, I gotta say, for a lot of gamers out there, it's uncomfortable for them to play a role playing game that's kind of set in a real world kind of setting. And yes, of course, we understand Call of Cthulhu is essentially a fantasy role playing game. It's a horror role playing game, and it's, based in history, but it is absolutely not historical. We get that. We understand that. But to get the most out of any sort of role playing game that deals in history, you can't ignore the history. And I know that there are players out there, Caucasian players, who would be very uncomfortable, or I don't want to say uncomfortable. They're probably they're concerned about being disrespectful or embarrassing themselves and things like that. And one of the aspects I think of, and it's kind of discussed a little bit in here, is that as long as you're respectful and you're not sitting there doing stupid voices and other things, if you're not trying to play off your character as a stereotype, you should be all right. And I find it funny that you've got all these people who, without blinking, will sit there and be like, okay, so I'm going to play a dwarf with a drinking problem who hates elves. I mean, oh yeah, that's okay. There's no issue with that. But if you're asking them to play another race in a realistic setting, then all of a sudden they're all freaking out. So one aspect about taking on playing these scenarios is that racism exists. And I mean, it exists today. It obviously existed at this point in time as well. And one of the cool things about the Harlem Renaissance was that in this one area of New York, you could have people of all kinds congregate together and enjoy themselves and what each brought to the table. Now, there's not to say that there's no racism going on in Harlem. Of course there is as well. But one thing I guess I would kind of sum up what Chris Spivey, and I might be completely losing what he's trying to say, but one of the aspects that I kind of got from talking about being a white player playing someone who is of color, let's say an African American, is that one thing you want to keep in mind is in this period, of course, obviously, a white person can never know what true racism is. They can't, because it's impossible. Because there is no such thing as reverse racism, and we won't get into that. But anyway, one thing that the player should look at as their character is, as an African American at that point in time, you have a feeling like you're being treated as if you're guilty of something without ever being guilty of anything. Yet that's what oppression is. This is treated really, really well, really in an adult manner. This is definitely not a source book for someone who's not going to take this in in the way that it's intended. Another thing that I want to point out is even with some of the heavy topics that are broached in this book, Chris Spivey never beats you over the head with it. And I like that a lot as well. Something else I want to point out right here. We got the mythos versus human evil. Something else that I appreciate is that at no point in time, and not that I would think he would ever do this, but at no point in time does Chris Spivey ever go into the whole, well, these people are the Klan, but it's actually the mythos that's making them, who they are. It's like, no, it's not. They're separate. They're two separate things. People who are despicable human beings who are part of the Klan are part of the Klan because they're despicable human beings. They're not Klan members because of the Cthulhu mythos. I appreciate that because one of the things that I had against the first edition of Achtung Cthulhu is that you'd have Nazi atrocities, and it's like, well, but we're chalking those up to the mythos, and it's like, no, not at all. It's not the case. So Flaming Heron says, don't worry. That's how most people see fantasy characters, Jeff. They're all stereotypes. Oh, I get that. I completely understand that. Omanal says, sadly, if you want a historically accurate feel, you can't shy away from negative aspects. No, I don't. I mean, I don't. Some things I don't linger on. All right. So kind of giving you a bit of an idea about the storytelling. We get kind of like a procedure to generate kind of Harlem-based adventures and things like that. We get some sample mythos characters and some generic NPCs. Then we get into the meat and potatoes of this book. It is the scenario section. There are 7 scenarios. I'm going to briefly touch on each of these. So the first scenario is Harlem Hellfighters never die. And they were actually, the Harlem Hellfighters were veterans of the First World War. They took part in the Battle of Belleau Wood. And they actually were under French command during that battle. So they were not just regulated to, like manual labor and things like that. And these were heroes. And this is actually also something that you can learn a little history about in this adventure as well. So this is kind of give you a high level look at the adventure. Is that the Germans were trying to utilize some MiGo technology, and they never perfected it to try to turn the tide in World War I. And what they are looking to do is they've used a MiGo brain case for one of the movers and shakers, one of the German movers and shakers, and they actually need to release this energy that is contained with veterans who fought in this one area of Belleau Wood. And of course, the Harlem Hellfighters, there's a squad that they're coming for, that they need to kill them to drain the power. So that's what's going on in this adventure. It's actually a pretty fun adventure. I'm not giving it its proper due. Next up, we've got That Jazz Craze. So this is an adventure that in some ways, it kind of reminds me a little bit of In the Mouth of Madness, the John Carpenter movie, the homage to the Cthulhu mythos. And what happens is there's a record that if you play it and you hear it, you suddenly lose the ability to communicate, to speak. And of course, it begins to drive you mad because you don't have the ability to communicate your thoughts with anybody. And of course, this is something that's very easily going to be able to spread. So anybody who listens to this gramophone record is going to, like, there's the artwork right there. They're going to lose the ability to communicate. So I thought that was very cool, a very Lovecraftian sort of adventure there. Then we got The Contender, a love story. So this is a tale that deals with the Innsmouth taint, which I'm always a big fan of. And this boxer is doesn't realize that they have the Innsmouth taint, and the player characters are going to find out about it. And then essentially at the end of this adventure, they have to decide, do they let this boxer know or not? And the thing is, the boxer, well, I guess I'll give it away. The boxer kills somebody in the ring. And the thing is, they're beginning to make that change. So Zach McKinney says, like the Sutter Kane stories. Yes. In the Mouth of Madness. I always like Call of Cthulhu adventures that provide the player characters with a definite moral dilemma. Do they tell this boxer what they learned? Hey, I got to be honest. It's possible that player characters don't even learn that. They don't even find out. And as I've mentioned before, when we've talked about Call of Cthulhu, I'm a game master. If you missed something or didn't complete the objectives like you thought you did, I don't tell people. I don't tell people how the adventure was supposed to go or what they missed or anything like that. I've never done that. And it doesn't matter if it's Call of Cthulhu or any other game. It's sort of like the adventure we played is the adventure. It doesn't matter if you missed out on half of it or not. All right, moving right along. I think we just skipped on into the next adventure. No, not yet. We're still in that one. Hang on. Flipping ahead. All right. So then we get to Dreams and Broken Wings. And in this adventure, the player characters are going to go head to head with a cult. They're going to go head to head with a mythos cult. And dreams are involved as well. So something I definitely liked, kind of give you a little look at what the adventure looks like here. Since I've been kind of flipping through really quick and skipping a lot of pages. I will mention, if you are someone who is about to run the newest edition of Masks of Nyarlathotep, there is an appearance by Jackson Elias in an adventure here. And I love it because when I did my review of the newest edition of Masks of Nyarlathotep, I pointed out that I would utilize that NPC a bit more and try to stay away from spoilers here, but because at the beginning of Masks of Nyarlathotep is something big that happens. And of course, if you already had that not only the intro adventure, but the adventure in here as well, you will now establish him as an important NPC. So there's much more weight to what happens. So Zach points out Chris Spivey worked on the new masks as well. You know, I was trying to take a peek to see if he had or not. And I don't think DriveThruRPG has him credited on Masks of Nyarlathotep. Now, it's not unusual for DriveThruRPG to have incorrect information. That is definitely the case a lot of times. All right, then we get an Ode for the Lost. This is where we get an introduction. We get some adventuring in the Dreamlands. I always love that. I always dig that. We don't see enough Dreamland stuff, and we don't see enough Dreamlands that's well presented. So sometimes in the past, the Dreamlands have been used more as kind of an escape for more of a fantasy kind of vibe, more of kind of like a Jack Vance sort of adventuring within the realm of Call of Cthulhu. That is not the case here. All right, moving right along. Then we have Whispers of Harlem. So there's a little bit of a Hollywood background to this adventure, although it does take place in Harlem. And this is kind of a traditional hunted man sort of adventure. And the one aspect I really like about this adventure is the ending could lead to a lot of different stuff. It could lead to a complete change in the future, or it could be everything seems to be the same. And we're talking worldwide. We're not just talking in Harlem. And it could feel like, oh, yeah, well, everything's still the same. Nothing's changed, but little tiny things. I think it's very cool. I think it's left up to, of course, the keeper. But I think this could turn out to be something, if you wanted to utilize it to like completely turn everything on its head, you could easily do that. All right, then we move into the final story, which, come on, there you go, your name in the book. So this is pretty wild because this takes place in 1680, but it's still in Harlem. It's still officially in Harlem. And you have a couple options. You can run it where the player characters are from that time period, or, and I think this would be pretty entertaining, if you could have it where the player characters are actually displaced in time. They could be time travelers or displaced in time. One thing that you can also utilize all of these adventures as a campaign, granted, loosely tied together, but you can utilize all these adventures together as a Harlem-based campaign. Something else that's going on in these adventures is that there's an optional rule you can utilize for racial tension. I don't know how sold I'm on it, but I could see using it. And essentially what it is that things become more difficult for you to succeed at when you are looking at dealing with someone of a different race, of a I guess we would say a substantially different looking race. So, you know, if it's like somebody's Dutch and somebody's Norwegian, you're not going to utilize that. And essentially what it's doing, it's giving you disadvantage on your rolls. I think it might be kind of tough utilizing that, but I could see where it's coming from. All right, then we're going to finally wrap up. We've got all these different handouts for the various different scenarios. Just kind of give you a look at some of these. And we get a timeline, bibliography, and an index and back. I like all the photography. I really do. I mentioned that earlier on, but I definitely dig all this photography as well. Boris says that their edition has a scenario called Harlem Nights. That is not present in this. So Amanal said there were a lot of friction between blacks who were coming up from the South and those who had established themselves before the mass migration. Yeah, I kind of understand that. I don't think I would use a racial tension mechanic for that. I don't know. I got to be honest. I honestly don't know if I would use that racial tension mechanic or not. All right, let's swing on over to the other camera because I am going to wrap up and give this a review score. I would have to say one of the reasons why I am a huge fan of Call of Cthulhu is because I also happen to be a huge fan of history. And I have always found that the best Call of Cthulhu supplements I've learned something from. I've learned something historical from. And it's really kind of whet my appetite to learn more about that period or more about that point in time or that historical event beyond just so I can run it at a game table. And that is certainly the case here with the second edition of Harlem Unbound. It is presented. How should I put this? Let me grab a quick sip because I've been talking on and on. Boris is guessing the score. Will Boris be right? I pointed out before, I really appreciated that Chris Spivey did not talk down to me, at least as me reading it. I don't feel that as the author, he's talking down to me or he's sitting there and trying to guilt me out or anything along those lines with Harlem Unbound. But he's not BSing anybody either. He's shooting straight, saying, hey, this is how it is. This is how it was and still is in many cases around this country, and goes full speed ahead. I love the fact where he's like, Lovecraft was racist, period. Don't make excuses. He was racist. Okay, so he's a racist SOB. Now let's play in his creations. I definitely dig that as well. Love all the historical background, but I guess more importantly, even if the background info wasn't as in-depth and well researched as it appears to be, once again, I'm no expert, but I can tell you, I can see Chris Spivey put his homework in here. But if the adventures weren't any good, then it'd be like, well, okay, so 100 of the 300 plus pages is good. Thankfully, each one of the adventures as well stands out, and they're all quite different, and they all take a different angle to different things. I love the fact that we've got one which is the player characters are kind of on the peripheral of a romance story, and they, there's information that they learn that can have a huge effect on the future of this family, not just the boxer. I love that. I love the Dreamlands being part of one of the adventures. I love the fact we've got an adventure where you can end the story and the whole future of the world is going to be different, or maybe not. Maybe it's all just the same. There's a lot of thought that's been put into the presentation of Harlem Unbound that I don't see in many role-playing game supplements. This is a book that is the reason why we play role-playing games. I honestly believe that. I think it is that good. It is. I would also say it's essential. If you are a keeper and you run Call of Cthulhu, if you run any Lovecraftian horror game, be it Trail of Cthulhu or Pulp Cthulhu or anything, there's loads in here that you can utilize. You can easily utilize 95% of this book. So you make a few changes to stat blocks, especially if you're playing like the Cthulhu hack. Stat blocks, what are those? I think this book is awesome. I know Sammy loved the first edition of this. I definitely love the second edition of this. On a scale of 0 through 10, I give the second edition of Harlem Unbound from Darker Hughes Studios and Chaosium Inc. my highest recommendation. It is a 10 out of 10. Boris got it right. He predicted it. There you go. So Boris says what happens in the Dreamlands stays in the Dreamlands. So Disavow92 says, I can only give one likey. I assume you guys are talking thumbs up or something to the video. Definitely pick this up. If you have the first edition, this is something else I should probably mention. Those out there who have the first edition and they're bouncing around, well, do I get the second edition? And it is $49.99. That's what I thought. I didn't think it was $44.99. It's $49.99 for the hardcover and $21.99 for the PDF. If you're bouncing around getting it and you already have the first edition, definitely pick it up because it has been expanded upon. I got to be honest, I don't know what exactly has been expanded, but I can tell you the page count is way higher. And if you got to, just get the PDF. Grab the PDF then. If you know, cost is a concern, then I would definitely say pop on over to DriveThruRPG and pick up the PDF. Man, it is good. It is really good. This is one of the best Call of Cthulhu books I have seen in some time. Even though I love the new Massenaire Lototep, gave that a 10 out of 10. I also give this one a 10 out of 10. And you know, if you follow the gaming gang, you know I don't throw around. What did I say throw away? I don't throw around 10s too lightly. I think we're at 812 reviews now. There might be 25 10s, if that. So I take my 10 out of 10s very seriously. All righty then. So sorry if you were like in chat and you were trying to engage with me in that. I apologize. I normally do not do reviews live. I tend to like not, I don't know what it is. It's like I was still peeking at, chat. I need to not do that. I need to like close the chat window when I'm doing the review and then open the chat window back up when I'm done with the review. Well, says the RPG industry wants to bankrupt them. Here's something I'm going to float out there real quick before we wrap up because we're hitting almost the hour and a half point. So this is a very long show. I tell people all the time, the most inexpensive, like, geek hobby they can get into is role-playing games. Because you can actually play role-playing games and never spend a dime. There are plenty of free rule sets out there. Most major role-playing games have an SRD that costs you nothing. Almost everybody's got a smartphone now, so there are free dice apps. You don't even have to buy dice. Tell people all the time. Because I know, we'll be looking at a book or something, and it's like, yeah, this is, $59.99. And people are like, oh, geez. They're like, oh, God, $60 for a book. Yeah, but just think how much enjoyment, how much gameplay that book will provide. I've said this before, but I sat and had pizza with John Zinser from AEG and Ken Haidt, because Ken's a Chicagoan. And Ken was talking about, if you want to make money, you don't get into role-playing games. Because if you put together a really good core book, you could sell that. Nobody ever has to buy anything from you again. So it's true. Omanal says, yeah, it's the completionist. That is. And I'm right with you. I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. I'm right with you. Sort of like, oh man, I need to have that. I need to get that. I don't think I'll ever use it, but I need to get it. I was really bad at that quite a ways ago, quite a while ago. All righty. So that is it for this time out. There's like little fuzz blowing around tonight. It's Pinky here. I know it. Damn you, Pinky. I'm kidding. She's a good cat. All right. Anyway, what's coming up the rest of this week? Well, we've got Peterson's Abominations. I'm going to review this on tomorrow's show. And then on Wednesday's show, I will be reviewing the Berlin supplement, Berlin the Wicked City, for Call of Cthulhu as well. This is, I think this is the special, like, limited edition that they sent along. So we've got some spooky stuff going on. It goes right with all those old-time radio shows that you can be checking out. Okay, so that is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell. It'll not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Central. I'll also tell you when I upload other videos, such as my recent review of Heirs to Heresy from Osprey Games. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Forgot to show you what Wizards of the Coast sent me, which, remember, we're still in October, so every day there's a new video. So this is what I'll take a look at on Thursday. Obviously enough, not a live show, but I will have a first look video at the Witchlight Carnival dice set. And there's some miscellany in here as well. And then the Dungeon Master's Screen Dungeon Kit. I was kind of surprised that these showed up because they came out. I thought they came out a little while ago, but then again, maybe with all the shipping problems, maybe they just arrived. So I'll be taking a peek at that. It'll be a standalone video on Thursday. Those of you who hung out watching live, thank you very much. I always appreciate people taking some time out to hang out with this goofball and taking part in chat as well to keep me company. Of course, I do know a lot of folks out there don't have an opportunity to watch live. So for those of you out there who do that as well, maybe you're watching on Memorex, I certainly appreciate that also. I appreciate anybody hanging out watching these videos. All right. Everybody enjoy the rest of your Monday night / Tuesday morning or what have you. I will be back tomorrow. And of course, here's hoping each and every one of you enjoys plenty of great gaming with your gang. Oh, you're still here. Well, while you're kicking it, how about subscribing to the Gaming Gang channel or seeing the latest episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch or finding out what YouTube recommends you check out here at my channel. And of course, don't forget, get your geek on at thegaminggang.com.